From buyer fatigue below 108,000, I beg your pardon, dollars in late June to a record-breaking rally past $112,000 just weeks later. Bitcoin has kept investors and analysts on edge in 2025 as institutional demand fuels the latest surge. The crypto market enters the second half of the year with renewed optimism, but also lingering questions about sustainability, volatility, and policy risks. We explore what could shape Bitcoin and the broader crypto market for the rest of the year. Ajibola Akamo, international financial analyst, joins me now for this conversation. Thank you for joining us.
I'm happy to be here.
All right, a pleasure. 2024 was a great year for crypto, but 2025, we saw that momentum sort of slow down and it seems to be picking up. Give us the highlights of, the performance of crypto for H1 2025, and what is driving the recent rebound with it hitting $112K? Is it just the big institutional investors, or are there other things pushing it up here?
Actually, it's 118K as we speak, so it's actually pushing towards 120, but we're seeing a very, very strong resistance around our price action. And even the sellers who are the short sellers in the market have actually lost over $1 billion in the last 24 hours, which is significant price actions we're seeing right now. But it's really a combination of multiple factors. First thing is the shrinking supply. As you know, there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoins that's going to be mined. And right now there's a dwindling stock of that 21 million that's actually available in the market. So we're seeing a supply shock, and that is currently boosting what we see in the market right now. If you look at the percentage of dormant coins. So when I say dormant coins, these are crypto wallets that have their Bitcoins that have not moved in over a year. That number is now surging towards 70%. So that is causing a very, very strong liquidity crunch, and this is pushing up the market. Another point to take note of is the massive institutional demands that we're seeing. We're seeing the ETF inflows in the US. We're seeing big corporations like even the Saudi fund is accumulating Bitcoin. We're seeing MicroStrategy and MicroSaylor, keep stacking up their Bitcoins, and the sentiment has been super bullish, especially because the Trump administration has been a very, very strong proponent and endorser of the crypto market. And even on the exchanges, we're seeing significant liquidity crunch. For instance, Bitcoin held in the exchanges dropped significantly. When you're comparing it from 2022, there was about 3.1 million. As of today now, it's about 2.45 million, which is a 29% decline. So we're seeing low Bitcoins on exchanges, which means that people are holding their supply and are not willing to sell. And that's pumping up the prices.
Right, and you've highlighted, as some of the drivers here, Trump trades. But aside that, what would you say is really driving this momentum, renewed interest in Bitcoin and making them hold? What's ahead? What's driving institutional investors taking positions in Bitcoin?
It's really more on the regulatory risk side. When you look at the regulatory landscape and, when Trump won the election, he has been a big proponent of crypto, and he has promised in his election campaign that he was going to, make crypto a big focus in his administration over the next 4 years. And he kind of showed that sentiment when him and his wife, Melania Trump, launched their meme coin earlier in the year. And, we saw that big meme coin rally that happened around those coins. So the sentiment has been very, very strong. And that's put a lot of institutional players and also individual players to, have a renewed belief, so to say, in the asset class. And that's why there's a big liquidity crunch right now. And it's come back to more of a feedback loop and amplification. If you look at, institutions are buying, there is a positive regulatory landscape around crypto right now. The supply is thinning on exchanges. People are holding their Bitcoins longer over a year period. And if you look at the FOMO, it's now all of that factor is causing FOMO. So people don't want to miss out on the gains that they're seeing in the markets today. So yeah, it's, a combination of factors, and it's been beautiful to see.
And we know that, crypto is typically a volatile asset, right? And of late, especially H1, there have been a lot of geopolitics and, trade, the conflicts and all of that that have meant uncertainty. And we've seen, people fly to safe haven assets. So, I mean, with what is ahead geopolitically, trade-wise, and Bitcoin being typically known as a risky, volatile asset, how do you see that, aside from all the regulation that you've hinted at, do you see that in any way impacting investor sentiments as regards crypto?
Yes, it's always going to be a factor. The volatility in the market is one thing I would say about trading in general, both in the stock market and also in the crypto market is, and I always try to tell people because people are like, oh yeah, crypto is, super volatile. Is this something I should be invested in? The truth is you want volatility. It's when you have volatility, that's when you make money, right? Whether it's the uptrend or the downtrend, people are always making or losing money both ways, right? So I think now people are starting to embrace and understand that crypto is that type of asset, and people are going in, especially the institutional investors are going in knowing that tomorrow they could see a $20,000-$30,000 drop in the price, and that risk factor is already factored into their investment strategy for crypto. And right now, because of that investment strategy, people are tending to hold long term, because if you look at Bitcoin over time, every since the inception till now, if you've held long term, you've always made money, right? So that's kind of like the sentiment right now.
All right. So, I mean, keying in on the volatility, you'd say. But, obviously it's a whole ecosystem. Bitcoin seems to be stealing the spotlight. What's happening with the other coins? Could we see some of them perhaps catch up soon? What are your thoughts?
The truth is, right now, there's this thing called the altcoin season, and this is where altcoins actually rally in the market. At the moment, there has not been a lot of altcoin momentum in the market right now. A good example of that, if you look at the last altcoin season to what the statistics we have now, for example, the Bitcoin dominance is very, very high. Is at 64%. And then the last time we had an altcoin season, that dominance dropped down to below 60%. So because of the high dominance right now, that's not necessarily pushing the altcoin season to happen. If you look at the altcoin season index, it's hovering around 20, 27, 28% the last I checked. And the true signal for when the altcoin season should start is when the signal is above 75, right? So it's still very, very low, and we have a long way to go. Although we've been seeing Ethereum, especially Solana, has been outperforming the market, but the rallies are very, very isolated in the market. It's only fixated to certain coins, and it's not really, spread across the entire altcoin. So, when you're looking at it from a perspective of why this hasn't happened, you're going to look at the institutional dominance in Bitcoin. That's really been driving the sentiments in crypto, and that's really been driving the market cap of the cryptocurrency industry right now. Everyone is Bitcoin, Bitcoin, and more Bitcoin. There's no much attention on the altcoins right now, and I think that's why the altcoins are suffering at the moment. But I do believe that we are going to see another altcoin season very soon. Of course, I'm not a genie. I can't predict when that's going to happen, but the sentiments are shifting. I saw XRP rallied significantly the other day. We're seeing Ethereum come up as well. We're seeing Solana come up. So it's going to be a trickling effect, but there's still an altcoin season out there.
All right, we'll keep our eyes peeled for that. And speaking of H2 2025 projections for the ecosystem, and even especially Bitcoin, we know that there were hopes of a strategic Bitcoin reserve by the end of this year. What are your thoughts on that? And also other projections is that the market cap of the crypto ecosystem could get to between $4 trillion to $5 trillion. What are your thoughts on that, considering where we are right now?
Personally, I'm not a big fan of big proclamations of projections of 4 trillion, 5 trillion, or people saying Bitcoin will get to 150K by the end of the year or 200K by the end of the year. The truth is, nobody's a genie. You can't tell these things. But one thing I would say would very much propel the crypto industry from where it currently is when the US takes front seat into leading clear regulations across the market. While Trump has been very, very supportive on the industry, right now there's simply no strong legislation that has been passed that is kind of giving regulatory oversights for cryptocurrencies. At the moment, there's still concerns over, hey, is crypto going to be regulated by the US SEC, or is it the Commodities Futures and Trading Commission that's going to regulate it? And if you look at the lawsuit that happened with XRP, it deemed XRP as a commodity and not a security. So there's still a lot of things to unpack there, but the lack of regulation, I believe, is the biggest threat to crypto right now. And everyone needs to take haste to finding reasonable legislation, not harsh legislation, but reasonable rules and regulations for the market, and pass that into law immediately. I think that would unnerve a lot of investor sentiments about the riskiness of the asset, and that would actually propel the market in general.
Interesting. We'll track all of that and more. And finally, we keep hearing about, like you said, new regulations coming. And as you have pointed out, there is some need, for that as a conversation in such a way that will not stifle it, right? Do you see that scaring off some of the big investors later this year?
The only way it would scare off big investors is if the regulations are harsh. Imagine if there is a 40% tax on gains on crypto, for example, which some countries have been suggesting. That would scare off investors. That would make investors pull out their money and not invest in the asset class, because imagine for every $1 gain that you make in crypto, the government is taking 40% of that. That is not going to help the market. So the only way that regulation will stifle growth in the market is if the regulation is harsh. So right now, I think there's a lot of lobbyists, in the U.S. government and also around the world. They're actually trying to push for reasonable regulations with the crypto market, and I believe that that is very, very attainable. And when that happens, it actually creates the rules and regulation, creates a fair playing field for anyone that's trying to get into the space, right? And that is where investors would want to, play around. Look at the S&P 500; it's been hitting all-time highs in recent weeks, and it's a market that's regulated. People like regulation. People like to understand that there's a clear rule that, judges this market. And once there's clear regulation, I believe that even the whales that we've yet to see will come into the market in full force.
All right, thank you very much for that breakdown, quite comprehensive. We'll see what happens in H2 2025. Ajibola Akamo, International Financial Analyst, a pleasure having you in.